The Japanese Emperor Sae Itoshi versus the French prodigy Charles Cavalier. A matchup to determine who is the real dominator of the midfield. As these two, in addition to Hiyori, are without a doubt the best playmakers the series has seen as of yet, and with Sae recently getting his anime debut, it's never been more fitting for us to look at their stats, abilities, and explore their best feats to determine who is overall better, and the player that reigns on the throne of midfield with terror. But before we do, however, I got an announcement. There is a friend of the channel who is actually an artist that goes by the name of Franco, whom I've been using his art ever since the inception of my channel, but recently he has been going through a lot in his real life. And so I would appreciate it, guys, if you followed him on Twitter. And hey, if you want any manga panel colored, just place a small commission for a small price. You absolutely don't have to, however, I would really appreciate it, as this is the least we can do for an artist who helped me to give you this content. However, with that out of the way, it's time we get to our matchup. It's time for Sae vs Charles. Sae Itoshi, the Itachi of Blue Lock and the prodigy of Japan. A cool-headed character that is very professional. However, don't let that fool you, as Sae is also very egotistical. He's a well-rounded player with an amazing physicality and a broken set of skills to go along with it. And much like his brother Ren, Sae has always had an innate talent for football ever since he was a kid, to the point of getting scouted at a very young age by Real, the best club in the world of Blue Lock. And I gotta say, this by itself is an insane of a feat, honestly. But also, this transfer to Spain played a huge role in Sae's ego maturity and his character development, which is actually very important to our matchup today, and I would go over it in depth later on. For now, however, let's start by going over his physical stats. Which, as I said before, Sae boasts a great well-rounded physicality. And while this was never really stated, we can derive this from the fact that, narratively speaking, he has a similar physicality to Ren's. But also, we saw in the U20 game how they were evenly matched physically speaking, and their matchups always get revolved through skill alone, which is funny if you think about it. They mirror each other, both generally well-rounded, but Ren is right-footed, while Sae is a lefty. This well-rounded physicality means Sae has great raw power and strength, great jumping ability, amazing speed, and an astonishing endurance. He might not straight up dominate any area, but much like Ryo, his well-roundedness makes him a master of all trades. However, all of this is kid's play. Where Sae shines is with his abilities and weapons. And so, without any further ado, let's explore those. Now, Sae is actually the perfect midfielder, as most of his abilities and weapons serve the purpose of delivering perfect passes to the front line. As such, it's only fitting that we talk about his passing ability first, as I believe this is the most prerequisite ability for an attacking midfielder. And Sae's passing is rather overpowered if you think about it. Get this, he has the most accurate passing ability we've seen thus far, a passing ability that can even rival the Predator Eyes when it comes to accuracy, which is a bold statement actually. I mean, for a show about strikers, you must know we have a plethora of midfielders that deliver the ball to said strikers, and among them all, Sae reigns on the throne of passing accuracy with terror. Not a single person actually comes close, with the exception of course being his opponent today. And even still, feats-wise, Sae is untouched. One example I always like to give is his free kick that he delivered to Shido in the U20 game, where he gave the latter such an accurate pass that it was 2 centimeters out of Chigiri's reach, but at the same time it matched Shido's vision perfectly, and this is what pushed me to theorize that this level of accuracy is rather comparable to the Predator Eyes. And actually more on that later as well, because this will lead us to speculate about an ocular ability that Sae has. But before we move to his vision, let's carry on with his passing related weapons, because accurate is not all there is to his passes. You see, we didn't get it at the time, but Sae was delivering passes that are tailored to the strikers he was forwarding the ball to. It's not just that he delivers the ball to the perfect position for you, but also he takes your specs, abilities, weapons, and even weaknesses into account. And thus Sae passes often feel so right to the situation and the playing style of the striker, which was what made the U20 forward line feel so at ease with his passes. However, and unlike his accuracy, this weapon is not that rare. We've seen Ryo utilize it before with Nagi, or better yet, we know Ness's delicate passes are perfect for Kaiser and work greatly with Noah. But the case stands that both midfielders did it with strikers they knew in and out and have played with for months at minimum. However, it took Sae just one attack for him to completely understand the U20 team's forward line and for him to start delivering perfectly tailored passes to each of the three strikers. This might seem to a lot of you guys as a very small weapon, but coupled with the right striker like Baru, Isigi and especially Shido, it becomes downright broken. But finally, regarding his passes, I want to talk about his versatility and trajectory control. In just one game, we've seen Sae deliver short passes, long-range passes, backspin, powerful, soft and even lob passes, which is actually the most we've seen any midfielder do, if again we exclude his opponent today, Charles. Now, for his trajectory control, we have seen Sae modify his pass courses so they evade the defenders, but at the same time reach the striker in the most optimal spot, which all in all makes him a very insane passer that 9 times out of 10 can deliver insane passes to the front line. However, that's not all the forward midfielder has to do in order to be considered one of the best. For instance, one must have the ability to free himself so he can deliver worthy passes, and usually this comes in the form of broken dribbling ability, like we have seen with Ness and Hiyori. As for Sae, he actually has an insane dribbling ability that might honestly be second only to Bachira and his brother Rin in his berserker state, excluding the pros of course. But also, what makes his dribbling insane is the fact that it is reactive. Unlike for example Lorenzo or early Bachira, who exert dribbling techniques regardless of their opponent, Sae actually moves the ball and dribbles reactively to what his adversary is doing, making stopping him a tricky ordeal because most of his moves are meant to react and counter the opponent. And if this is not impressive enough, there is more to his dribbling technique. As Sae is a very calculated player, and often this is embodied in his dribbling, where he first analyzes his opponent, then meticulously counters that opponent, making it near damn impossible to stop, and actually resolves in one of the most beautifully destructive dribbling abilities. Speaking of beauty, Sae has one of the most elegant off-the-ball movements and positioning, often beautifully stealing the spotlight by positioning himself in the most critical area. And at this point, you can tell where I am going with this. Of course, I'm going to talk about his strongest weapon, the weapon that enables his insane off-the-ball movements, Metavision. Now, for those who live under a rock, Metavision is an ocular ability where the player utilizes his peripheral vision in order to take every information his eyes catch. Furthermore, the player shakes his head in all directions in order to widen his field of vision to be 360, giving the player a bird's eye-like view. And from this description alone, you can tell that there are levels to Metavision. Depending on how much information the player inputs, his Metavision gets more scary. As for Sae, we don't really know much about his Metavision, given the fact that we saw it before Metavision was properly introduced. But, for the very least, we know it was on Isigi's level during the Manshine City game, which honestly is not that impressive considering we have gotten much stronger Metavisions after that point. But this is not concrete since we did not see the full scope of his ocular ability, and as such, we can't really judge it as accurately as I would have loved to. And I know a lot of you guys would say that he is a new Gen 11 and thus he has an insane Metavision, but that's not necessarily true. Lorenzo is honestly insane and downright broken and he doesn't even have Metavision to begin with. In any case, for the very least, we know that his vision enabled him to perfectly position himself so he can deliver the best of passes, but more importantly it enabled him to play with no intervals. Which is a hallmark of Metavision, I know, but Sae really looked like he was on a whole different level. By the time any defender reached him and tried to stop him, he has already passed, which was at such an insane pace that even fast players like Yuki and Chigiri struggled to keep up with him. And again, if you couple this with strikers that have perfect positioning like Isigi and Shido, it ends up being super deadly and really proves that Sae was on a league of his own for the most part of Blue Lock. Because honestly, he quite literally is the perfect midfielder, with weapons and abilities that make him perfect for delivering the most beautiful, yet critical passes to the front line. But can he beat the young prodigy Charles Chevalier? One of the most mysterious things about the Neo Egoist League was actually how did Rin and Shido coexist in PXG? We clearly saw that they were unable to do so before, and so seeing them actually dominate the league was quite puzzling. That was until we got introduced to the first new Gen 11 candidate, Charles Chevalier. A midfielder who was able to match both striker styles very easily, and was the reason they coexisted fairly well. A little contrarian imp who tamed the beasts. And even now, with Berserker Rin running rampant, Charles is very easily and routinely keeping up with his impossible vision. But before we talk about the magic that Charles was casting on PXG, we gotta start with his physical stats, which I gotta say, Charles is on the weaker side when it comes to physicality, being even weaker than Isagi, with endurance being his only great stat since he was on demon time the whole game, keeping up with Hiyori, Isagi, Kaiser, Rin, Shido, you name it. He honestly had no issue playing with anyone or against anyone. However, that's about it. His jumping ability is pretty laughable, him being an imp and whatnot, and his speed and raw power are mediocre at best. But honestly, for him none of this matters, because what Charles lacks in physicality more than compensates for with his broken set of abilities and weapons, which is what we are going to explore next. First and again, we are going to start with his passing ability, which as I said, Charles has one of the most accurate passes we have seen thus far. He was able to squeeze a pass to Shido even though Kaiser and Ness blocked upwards of 99% of his options, which actually might be the best passing feats in the series due to it being against Kaiser with his meta vision, and Ness who is a demon when it comes to passing himself and would understand what options are more dangerous. Beyond that, we know that Charles is very accurate due to a vision he presents that we will actually explore after we finish with his passing, because next I want to talk about his passing versatility and trajectory control, which honestly are just off the charts. As in a singular game, this game, the PXG match, we have seen more types of passes from Charles than all what we have seen from the other passers combined, excluding of course Sae. And seriously, you name it. If a type of a pass exists, you know Charles already used it. He even used a rebound across to deliver a pinpoint pass to where both Shido and Rin could reach, and the imp had them fight for the throne. And going back to his feat against Ness and Kaiser, his trajectory control is also through the roof. As I said, he sent a perfect pass to Shido even though his options were 99% cut off. But more impressively, in another instance, we saw him deliver a pass to the empty space behind Isagi and Rin. However, the pass was just barely above their heads so it doesn't lose speed, but at the same time there was no way for them to reach it. And by the way, this pass was special in that Charles targeted the empty space, the perfect space for a striker to move to, which is actually a sub-ability to Metavision. Speaking of which, it's time for us to talk about Charles' ocular ability. Immediately after the PXG game started, Isagi noticed something was off with Charles' movements. They seemed very familiar. They actually reminded him of himself. And it didn't take too long for the two to confirm it. Charles too has Metavision, and his was actually on Isagi's level at the PXG game, meaning Charles now has Metavision of the highest caliber, and this is confirmed with his battle with Hiyori, where he won all of them when it came to vision. In fact, he is the first person to show that Metavision can beat the Predator eyes once they lock in, when he pulled off the insane feat of stopping the Kaiser impact in chapter 286. Well, not quite, because Kaiser was completely free, so you might think he did not use his Predator eyes, which I can see to be true. But hold on, just beyond that, this is Kaiser we're talking about. Stopping the Kaiser impact is still one of the craziest feats ever. And yes, Charles is only the third person to pull off this feat, and actually second in the U20 category. And as I said in Lorenzo's assessment, the fact that Loki was the only other player to do so is a huge feat for both U20 players. Now, obviously, Lorenzo's feat was far better, since in that situation Kaiser had many options and space, while here Charles closed in on Kaiser and the latter had not so many options. But this actually is a feat on its own, because this move from Charles is attributed to his metavision and his readability of the field, which I think it's the best defensive metavision feat we have seen as of yet. And I know, we didn't see the full extent of Isagi's new metavision in his architect state, but as of now, I can confidently say Charles has the best metavision in the U20 category, and second only to Snuffy, which honestly, this alone could give the matchup to Charles. Having a superior metavision is usually enough for a player to beat anyone else. However, the case for today is Sae is also very broken, and so the matchup is still flaming on. Okay, saying that Charles has the best metavision is definitely impressive, but let's talk about the way he actually uses it. And this is where it gets interesting, because much like Isagi, Charles uses metavision exclusively to place himself in empty spaces, because he does not have a broken dribbling ability. I mean, he's a good dribbler, but nowhere near the top, especially for midfielders. Again, just look at Hiyori or Ness, or better yet, his opponent today, Sae. But his ability to target the empty space is so OP that often he doesn't need to dribble past anyone. And this of course means that he has insane no-interval plays. The moment the space is about to open, you already know Charles is on it and he is targeting that. And the moment he receives the ball, he immediately gets to it. He either makes a quick breakthrough before passing, or if the situation calls for it, immediately forwards the ball. And to convey just how broken his no-interval plays are, this was super annoying for Bastard, even with 3 of their players having metavision. So as I said, this is such a broken feat for Charles. Now, if you thought that's all there is to his vision, well, think again. Because Charles' metavision is the second in the series that has a distinctive design to it, after Isagi's. Not even Snuffy himself has a special design. This led me and the community to speculate that Charles presents a new ocular ability that is yet to be explained by the author, on top of his metavision, because actually we've seen both designs from him, the usual grid for metavision and this orange-like design. We call this new speculative ocular ability the Sniper Eyes, and much like the name suggests, it allows the latter to snipe the best passing course and option. And I know, this ability might only be speculative, but much how Kaiser's Predator Eyes were hinted at in the Manshine City game, these eyes can be seen when Charles is about to forward one of his signature passes, or when he is about to intercept a deadly pass by the enemy team. And so you could say these eyes grants him the ability to sense what is the best passing course. Then when on defense he can easily counters it. And that actually worked on both Kaiser and Isagi until Kiora tricked him with his perfect pass to Kaiser. Because frankly both Charles and Rin at that moment had to choose between Isagi and Kaiser. And by the way the game was going, Isagi was by far more dangerous than Kaiser. And so this takes nothing away from Charles' vision. Moreover, these eyes also help Charles decides what's the best pass for the situation, and actually for any striker he's aiming for, making him able to match any forward player's vision and deliver a perfectly tailored pass to said striker. Better yet, Charles can even perform Hiyori special passes that are not tailored to any player, but rather the best pass for any given situation on the field. And we have actually seen this from the French imp when he delivered a pass that no one from Bastard was able to react to, except Isagi in his berserker state. But at the same time, it was perfect for both Rin and Shido. And the fact that Isagi in his berserker state, which I call the architect, was the only player that reacted to that pass, really shows how far Charles is as a midfielder. And honestly, he's near impossible to beat, if it wasn't for a pretty big weakness of his, which is actually in his name, the Contrarian Imp. Charles, despite being such a broken player with his insane weapons, often puts himself in undesirable situations, and at such a high level this is actually deadly. Players with a protagonist feeling like Hiyori, Baro and Isagi can easily exploit his contrarian self if they set their sights on him. But more importantly, his playful and not serious nature, coupled with his contrarian mentality, can cause him to straight up throw away games if he deems the plays boring or too predictable, which means it actually limits his interactions with rational players such as Rin prior to his berserker state, or Isagi and Noah. Which honestly, if you think about it, is such a huge deal, because not being able to play with the best of the best is just bad. There is actually no way to sugarcoat it. But still, despite this glaring weakness, Charles pulled some off, if not the most impressive feats for a midfielder, especially at this very high level. And funny enough, he remains the only player in addition to Kaiser to be able to react to Berserker, Rin and Isagi, and it actually no wonder why Loki thinks so much of this young prodigy. I mean, a vision that rivals the Predator Eyes for a midfielder, the best meta vision for the U20 category as of now, and an insane passing ability on top of that. This little imp is rather insanely good, and easily explains why he is the only player we saw handle both Shido and Rin at the same time. But can this fiendish imp beat the Japanese Spider-Man? Sae vs Charles is a matchup that I was holding off from doing for the most part, not because we did not see more from Sae or if it is too early, but rather, the community seems to think that it is pretty one-sided. I mean, a lot of you guys think this is an easy win to Sae, given the fact that the latter is a new Gen 11, and he was scouted by Real at a young age. But to me, this could not be further from the truth. As I said before in Aiko vs Lorenzo matchup, The new Gen 11 currently are being threatened by many of the Blue Lockers and the other U20 players, case in point Kaiser being rivaled by Isagi, Rin and Baro. And besides, even Loki himself chose Charles as his prodigy to help him achieve higher levels. I mean, if you could believe it, a guy that went pro at 17 was looking for a midfielder that would actually help him improve and reach Noel Noah's level, which honestly really raises the stocks for Charles. So guys, let's look at this matchup with an open mind. And straight up, may the better midfielder win. And for that, we need to get the obvious out of the way first. When it comes to physicality, Sae destroys Charles. Honestly, it's not even a contest. A well-rounded player versus a childish imp. It actually couldn't be more one-sided. But as always, this isn't a fist fight, and football matchups don't usually get decided with physicality alone. Although I gotta note, for a midfielder, Sae being well-rounded is insanely helpful, as he can hold the midfield with a firm fist, and then use his plethora of weapons to forward the ball to the front line. And speaking of holding the ball in the midfield, well, dribbling wise and the player's ability to free himself up to deliver a pass, it's no denying it. Sae also trumps Charles here completely, and it's not even close. And so this too is completely one-sided and it's not even funny. But think about it, when it comes to the ability to free himself, Charles might lose miserably when it comes to on-the-ball plays. Off the ball, however, Charles being comparable or even better than PXG Isagi in this regard is insane honestly. And to be frank, we haven't seen anything remotely close from Sae here. I mean, he was everywhere in the U20 game, and later Isagi explained that he was doing that through Metavision. But I can't really compare playing against the Blue Lockers at that level versus them now. Now, to be fair, for all we know, Sae could have better off-the-ball movements because Isagi simply said that he now understood what Sae was doing and not that was Sae's level necessarily. And I know I always take in feats over potential, but this one seems as if Sae would definitely be on Isagi's level simply because he is a new Gen 11. I mean, he is at least up there, right? But still, due to just how crazy his off-the-ball movements, I will give this point to Charles, because even though Sae could, we are yet to see movements on the level of the French imp, who freaking stopped the Kaiser impact just with his insane off-the-ball plays. And it doesn't end here too. I mean, look at their passing ability. Even though I think we have seen more accurate passes from Sae than Charles, the latter actually trumps him in any other criteria when it comes to passing. We have seen more variation in Charles' passes, we have seen more diversity and even more advanced passes from Charles than Sae. And I know this could be attributed to the fact that Sendo and the rest of the U20 forward line are not able to handle more advanced passes. But this remains speculation. And also we've seen Charles modify his trajectory far better than Sae, him targeting Rin, only for it to be revealed that he used him as a bait, as the ball started to rise and was just few centimeters outside of Rin's reach. And then the fact that we've seen him deliver a perfectly tailored pass, not just to one player at a time like Sae did in the U20 game, but to even two beasts. But there is one criteria where Sae trumps Charles when it comes to passing, which is him understanding his strikers better than Charles. Sure, the latter can match Rin and Shido, but I mean, I can argue that because Rin and Shido are way too powerful, it's sometimes easier to bring the best out of them, unlike poor Sae who had to bring the best out of dogshit players. So I think in terms of understanding the striker better, Sae wins. And from this back and forth in these points, you can clearly see how the two midfielders are evenly matched. However, you already know, I did not talk about one broken ability Charles has that might give him the edge today, which is his sniper eyes. I know, it's just a speculation, but honestly, the way he played and the fact that he has a distinctive design, in addition to his simple Metavision design, makes it very hard for me to believe he doesn't have those eyes, or at least an ocular ability with similar properties. And honestly, this swings things towards the French prodigy widely, if it wasn't for one small detail, which is something I covered in my video about Charles' distinctive vision. I said that we have seen the same plays that Charles was doing before, albeit not to the same extent. In the same way we saw the Predator eyes with Kaiser before Baro showed their true level. I said we saw the same plays of the sniper eyes from Sae before we got introduced to them fully from Charles. And even though this might seem to be a stretch, think about it. Sae also was instantly hunting perfect pass courses. And then there is the insane accuracy. But more importantly, much like Charles, who sniped a trajectory even though his options are blocked 99%, so did Sae when he forwarded the ball between Chigiri and Nico. Again, not to the same level of Charles since he was against Kaiser and Ness, but if you think about it, Sae did not need to pull the same level back then, and so we can speculate he can do the same. I would say Charles might have an edge, but if Sae has these eyes too, I think they would be evenly matched again, with it being more favorable towards Charles. Well, if we don't account for his glaring weakness, which I think is his downfall in today's matchup. As I stated before in many of my videos, I love Sae's seriousness. His professionalism and cool-headedness is really commendable, and the fact that the two most powerful pros, Noah and Snuffy, are serious and as professional as ever really sells my point regarding Sae's mentality. I think due to Charles being childish and him being very playful and not taking things seriously, a player such as Sae with his seriousness, well-roundedness and his plethora of weapons really is overall better. Even though if we take mentality out of the equation, I think Charles is better than Sae. Overall, we need to account for everything, and mentality is such a huge deal for players. Just ask Isigi recently and Noah, Snuffy and Baro before. And so when it comes to the overall assessment, including all the variables, I think Sae is the better midfielder and the better overall player, and is the winner of our matchup today. However, that's all I've got for you today, guys. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and please let me know what do you think of this matchup. And until next time, thank you for watching.